Welcome to the Taped Podcast, the most grunge podcast in the world. We are your hosts, myself, Kurt.
And me, what? Christ.
Nah, Michael.
And Miho.
And
I didn't know we were playing roleplay.
We're role-playing here. I'm Kurt.
Alright, I'll be Christ.
Alright. So, for today's episode of the Taped Podcast, we're going to be doing the similar thing that we do all the time. 4 new albums, 3 new ones, and a classic.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 new ones that we're going to be covering today is The Night Chancers by Baxter Dury,
Woo!
Melee by Dogleg,
Woo!
Kiss My Super Bowl Ring by The Garden,
Woo!
and for our classic today, we have Nevermind by Nirvana.
Hell yeah.
So, we've got lots to cover today. I'm excited for today. And, yeah, I think we should just get into it. What do you want to start with?
Oh, I get the pick. We'll start with Baxter Dury.
Alright. You have a synopsis on him?
Baxter Dury is an English singer-songwriter and musician who's been consistently releasing music since the early 2000s. The Night Chancers is his 6th studio album.
Alright, sick. And we'll start with track 1, I'm Not Your Dog.
Do you want to take it first?
Yeah, sure. Right off the bat, I really, really like this track. It is a great opener. The instrumental is pretty synthy, it's atmospheric. It gets orchestral as well. And it has kind of like these nostalgic like 80s type drums that you would find in like any kind of 80s synth pop like song. It's pretty nostalgic, and vocal performances are actually pretty decent on this one. I think they complemented it very well. It was straight to the point and a fucking great opener, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the instrumental is great. It's very synth-based, very driving. I like how the kind of French pop aspects blend well with, Jury's more kind of aggressive, almost smug, spoken vocals. It's got a lot of layering, the instrumental. It's got sparkles of guitar. There's like some angelic synths in there. And I think it's a nice, interesting kind of atmosphere for an opening track. And I think everything comes together, and it's one of my favorites. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's one of my favorites.
I would say the same thing. I gave this track a 9.
I also gave it a 9.
Woo! Starting off with agreement, let's go.
Hell yeah.
Next track is Slumford, and similar to the previous track, I think it is a great track. I really love like the slick bass line on this track too. It was pretty fucking sick. There's like orchestral strings in there too. I thought that was a pretty cool addition as well. The drums are pretty punchy, and the chords are pretty cool as well. And I have down in my notes King Cruel Lamau.
It has that same kind of suburban British atmosphere, I'd say.
Yeah, it has kind of that kind of you could say monotone, like kind of heavy, like deep voice. That's kind of similar, but I think it's cool. The vocals are really cool. I think they're really good. They fit well with this track in particular.
Yeah. As you said, the bass line just consistently throughout the track stays very strong. And again, the kind of French pop inspired female vocals really contrast well against Baxter's more, gritty masculine vocals. And yeah, Baxter's vocal delivery as a whole, I think, is great. It's kind of snarky, but at the same time, it's very kind of down to earth and, pleasant. I think this is another really good track.
I gave this a 9.
I gave it an 8.
Sick. Saliva Hog. This one to me wasn't really one of the more memorable tracks on the album. It was still pretty good. It had a nice like slick bass line, again, more orchestral sounds, and halfway through this one gets really synth heavy. But I think it's okay for the most part. Group vocals are pretty cool too. But ultimately I didn't really find this one as memorable as the previous two, but it's still good nonetheless.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a good track, but I wouldn't say it's one of the best. The instrumental, again, is really cool. Kind of follows the same theme. heavily inspired kind of by French pop, disco almost. I think the female backing vocals, again, they show up throughout this album and they do add a nice touch to the overall sound, the overall direction. And I really think the strings in this particular track carry it, kind of change it up throughout and stop it from ever becoming boring or repetitive. And yeah, as you said, it is a good track, but I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I gave this one a 7.
I also gave it a 7.
Samurai. I think this one is kind of unmemorable as well as the previous track. I thought the bass was pretty good. It was really, really good. That's like a similar thing. The bass playing is actually pretty sick throughout this whole album.
Mm-hmm.
Like the kind of soft piano in the background is pretty cool as well. And the orchestral end was really nice. There's some, eerie spoken word too, but overall I didn't really find it that memorable, to be fair. Like, it's still good. It's still good, just nothing that is kind of, like, worth, like, noting to memory at this point.
Yeah. What you said is I agree with it, that it's a good track. Pretty much like the last one. It's a good track. The instrumentals kind of follow a similar theme, like to the previous tracks. Like the whole album has this theme to it, but it never kind of bleeds into one another. The tracks never bleed into one another. They never really become stale or repetitive. Every single track, I think, has its own unique flair. This one, I particularly do love the female vocals on this one. They kind of give a song more flair, more melody. They kind of act like an instrument in of itself. And yeah, I think it's another good track, but I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites.
Fair. I gave this track a 7.
I also give it a 7.
Sleep People. Now, where the previous tracks lost me, this track in particular picked the stakes right back up for me. I think that it attempts to be kind of like psychedelic in a way, especially in the synths, I would say. Like, it's atmospheric, the synths are really nice and psyche. The orchestra was pretty good too. And the horns on this track were great as well. I really like the horn sections on this track too. And again, Baxter's vocals are pretty deep and they're pretty direct. And I think they really suit the vibe. I think it sounds great. I think this is another one of my favorite tracks on the album.
I wouldn't call him one of my favorites. I think it's another really good track. I do agree with what you said. I think Baxter gives off a really good performance. One of his most memorable on the album, I would say. I think the instrumental is a bit different to some of the previous tracks in that it's a bit more light, a bit more breezy, and I think Dury rides it very well. Yeah, and I think the female vocals are once again a nice addition. They kind of balance out well with Baxter Dury's like really deep, almost spoken vocals. And yeah, it wouldn't be one of my favorites, but it is a good track.
I gave this one a 9.
I gave it a 7.
Carla's got a boyfriend. No, this track, similar to ones at the beginning of the album, has got a nice, like, slick bass line, some nice chords, pretty cool string section, and the drums are really sick on this one too. I really like the drums on this track in particular. The lyrics are basically him, simping, he's simping. But, it's... I'm only messing, it's fine. Like, it's cool. Baxter gave a good performance, and the kind of group background vocals were pretty cool as well. I really like this track quite a lot.
Yeah, I love the instrumental, very dreamy, very light, and I think the strings really are incredible, and they do a really good job kind of intertwining with the female vocals. And as a whole, I think the dynamic of this track is just amazing. How it's mixed, how it kind of contrasts, how its features kind of contrast one another. And it's certainly one of my favorite tracks on the album. I'd say top 3.
Sick. Gave this one an 8.
I give it a 9.
The title track, The Night Chasers.
Chancers.
Chancers? Oh shit, I have Chasers written down. Why? Never mind.
I think I read it as that the first time as well.
Nevermind, it's fine. It has like kind of a orchestral opening into these like synthy instrumental. I think it is really fucking groovy. I really dig this instrumental. Has a kind of a spoken word kind of delivery to the Baxter's vocals, and it's based more on more relationship type tracks, but it's really good. I really, really like this track for the score I gave it.
Yeah, I agree with you that this is definitely one of my favorite instrumentals. I think it has so many different layers, and I think every single layer comes together into one big groovy unit. I think Dury gives one of his best performances. I think the strings again really add a lot to the track, a lot of flair, a lot of just prettiness overall. Yeah, and the female vocals are among my favorite on the album. They almost sound haunted in a way. It gives the track a bit of an atmosphere. It really is the cherry on top for the track for me. And it's probably the female vocals are probably one of my favorite moments on this whole album.
Sick. I gave this track a 9.
I also gave it a 9.
Lovely. Next track is Hello, I'm Sorry. It's got a really sick bass line. Like, I fucking love the bass playing on this album. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's got these kind of like tingy kind of synths, and it's got some really cool chords, and the sax is so good. I literally wrote down in my notes, sax equals sex.
It's saxophone.
Yes. It's got like weird drums on it, but they actually sound great. They fit really well. Again, the group vocals are fantastic. Baxter was pretty decent as well. He's just answering the phone. That's all. That's what he does on this track. But I think it's great. It's another highlight for me.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite track in the album. I think it's kind of a change of pace when it comes to the instrumental. I think it's got a very groovy flair to it, but it also is quite dancey in a way. The driving, like kind of steady drum beat, I think definitely helps with that. As you said, bass is fantastic. Horns are a really nice addition to the track. I think, as you said, Baxter plays kind of call and response in a kind of literal way with the female vocals on this track, and I think that's a really cool dynamic. Gives the track definitely memorable quality. Overall, it is, I would say it's my favorite track on the album.
I gave it a 9.
I also give it a 9.
Sick. Daylight. Daylight, it's another highlight for me on the album. It's got like this emotional string section. The drums are pretty good. It's got like a faint bass in the background, and it's really nice. I love the somberness of this track as a whole. It's like a pretty excuse me. It's pretty somber instrumental. You got sweet vocal performances, very dark lyrics. I think it is another great highlight for me, at least for this album. The instrumental, very kind of down-tempo, larger than life. It's kind of carried by the synths and the strings, which are, as I said, very large, very grand. And I think Baxter vocals are still as snarky as always, but they do have... There's a lot of emotion to them, I think, and this track kind of exemplifies that emotion with the very touching kind of grand instrumental. Backing vocals, like, to highlight certain lines as well, I thought was a very clever touch when it comes to the mixing. Overall, the mixing on this whole album is really good. And it's another really good track. Crisp. It's very crisp in the mix. I really like it. I
definitely
gave this track... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was definitely like very inspired by French pop and has that same atmosphere, even when it comes to the mixing.
I gave this track a 9.
I give it an 8.
Final track, Say Nothing. And I thought this was a fantastic way to end the album. Again, it's got a really groovy bass line. It's got some cool guitars, some cool strings, and some really nice synths. And I think that vocal performances throughout this whole track were really good. They were pretty catchy. They were pretty... They suited the instrumental very well, in my opinion. And overall, I feel like this is a very strong ending to the album. I'd say this is like top 3 on the album for me. And
I agree. This is my second favorite track. I think synths are very grand and anthemic, kind of represent the end of the album really well. Jury's vocals are strong, very attention grabbing. I think the female vocals highlight the track, highlight certain aspects of the track. I think they are a highlight when it comes to the whole album. The Baxter loves you refrain is one hell of a kind of catchy and memorable way to close off the album. It's a brilliant track. It gets stuck in your head, but you don't mind. And yeah, great track.
Give it a 9.
I also give it a 9.
Overall thoughts on and opinions on The Night Chancers by Baxter Dury.
What order are we doing this in?
I think I'll go first.
All right, yeah,
I'll just
we'll
get
do it the same as the songs.
Yeah. All right, so going into this, didn't know what to expect. I never listened to Baxter Dury's music before, but I can say this is one hell of a way to start off in his discography, I would say. Personally, I really, really dig the instrumentation on this album. There's so many great aspects to the production. Like, I love the bass playing throughout this album. I've mentioned the bass enough at this point. I really love like all these like grand and orchestral and atmospheric moments too. I think they really encapsulated me into the album experience, and I think obviously highlights were the group vocal performances and Baxter himself. Him and the group vocals, they were fantastic. I think that they matched the instrumentation extremely well, and they kind of encapsulated me in this whole album experience. And this is probably like a top 5 album for me of the year as of right now. Ooh. I think it is a great album and definitely a big recommendation from me, I would say. I would definitely go as far... Yeah, it's definitely top 5, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. One of my favorite albums of the year, and I would recommend it to anyone. It's not my first Baxter Dury album. Ken Goji from Album of the Year did make me listen to some of his music before. I always liked it, and I kind of knew coming into this album what to expect, and I knew that I was probably in for a treat, and I was. I think the Night Chancers is an album that's, I think, full of itself in the best way possible. I think Baxter's attitude on these tracks is very snarky, very confident, and I think it contrasts well against the kind of heavy use of female backing vocals, French pop / disco inspired instrumentals, and I think it has very those aspects give it a very lush and pretty quality, but I think that Baxter's contributions give it also kind of like a groovy and filthy quality, and I think everything comes together very memorable, very anthemic at times, and I think it almost feels like an idolization of like the most average aspects of British culture and life, and I think it's a cool concept, and I think it's one of my favorite albums of the year so far, as you said.
Overall scores?
I give it a light 8.
I gave it a decent 8.
Hell yeah.
Alright, moving on to the next album. I think we should do Kiss My Super Bowl Ring.
Alright.
You have a synopsis?
Of course I do. Who do you think I am? The Garden is an American experimental / art punk band from Orange County, California, formed in 2011, consisting of identical twin brothers Wyatt Shears on vocals and bass and Fletcher Shears on drums. Kiss My Super Bowl Ring is their 4th studio album.
Alright. Track 1, Clench to Stay Awake. This was a pretty good opener to the album. I really like the low-key opening. It starts minimal, as throughout it gets a bit more digital. Then it turns into an absolute fucking insane grunge type shit. It's aggressive. Fucking love the instrumentation on this album. And the vocals, they start soft and then they get fucking unhinged as hell in screamo. Wyatt was great on vocals. I think it was a really great way to open it. It really set the tone for the album very well, in my opinion at least. But, actually, fun fact, this is my least favorite track on the album.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not even kidding.
Well, I was going to ask for the rating. I forgot that I have to give my opinions. I really love this track. I think that kind of how it begins with these kind of monotone vocals, driving bass and drums, kind of giving it a bit of energy. But like the vocals definitely like stay very monotone, very calm. Almost sounds like a track of Mac DeMarco's new album or something. It's odd. But then like the track kind of stops and then starts up again, and the drums and bass both like kick up a notch and like become fucking hectic and crazy. Vocals very much punk, you know. This track is just, I think, very, very punk in what it does, but it's not your regular punk in any way, shape or form. Then, as you said, the track just becomes unhinged with the screaming vocals. I think it just gives the track just insane intensity. And like the whole progression of the track just kind of loops as it goes back to the monotone vocals, then back to the punk, then back to the screaming. It just repeats. And I think it's one of the highlight tracks off the album for me, just right off the bat.
I gave it an 8.
Oh, your least favorite track?
Yeah, not even kidding.
Damn, I give it a 9.
A struggle. Right. It opens up. Complete insanity. Complete fucking insanity, right? Then, like, a little bit later, it turns into, like, kind of ambient calmness. It's got nice synths. It's got nice, like, drums and guitars. Then it turns into insanity again, if I'm correct on that. And I do really like the mix-up of, like, vocal variation. Like, on one hand, you'll just have, like, calm, like, somber vocals, you could say. Then just turns into complete insanity. And, honestly, they're great. I really like this track. I think it is a great track.
Yeah, right off the bat, it starts crazy. Doesn't hesitate like the last track kind of did. I think the contrast between the kind of insane screaming and, you know, mellow, as I said, almost Mac DeMarco sounding sections, very memorable, very unique. I think the chorus is awesome with the driving bass, kind of light synth, sparkling the track, and very tight, very good drumming. Yeah, another brilliant track.
I give it a 9.
I also give it a 9.
Sneaky Devil. Now, Sneaky Devil is my favourite track on the album. I really like the entire energetic, like, combination between the instrumentation and the vocalist. The bass is sick. Has, like, kind of a garage drum pattern. And these really, like, fat fucking synths. It's pure fucking bliss. I love the production on this song. And, of course, the vocal performances are fucking fantastic. They match the energy of the instrumentation very well. It's energetic as hell. I fuck with this track heavy, and this is my song of the year now.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not fucking kidding.
Sneaky Devil, everyone.
Sneaky Devil, my...
If you're to listen to one song, I think Michael recommends is this one.
It gets the Mickey T stamp of approval.
Damn. Yeah, the drums sound like they're straight out of a big beat song, like a Prodigy song or something. Vocals and the spacey synths and the mix kind of make this crazy, give it this crazy intensity, but also very fun kind of energy. At the same time, the track just sounds like nothing I've heard before, really. As I said, it's very much rooted in punk and has that punk attitude and energy, but it just sounds like no punk I've ever heard before, that's for sure. Yeah, it's an awesome track. Absolutely love it.
It's 10 for me.
Is that a surprise?
I mean, I already spoiled it at this point.
I give it a 9.
Alright, title track, Kiss My Super Bowl Ring. And another great follow-up to the previous track. I think that this one is fucking brilliant. It's really synthy, it's heavy, the drums are so fucking sick, feels very digital. The vocal performance is great too. The lyrics are a bit repetitive, but I still think it's fine. Like, it grew on me pretty heavy after my second listen. And it's another one of my favourite tracks in the album. I think it's pure fucking bliss at this point.
Right off the bat, I'll add that this is probably the catchiest song on the album. It's been stuck in my head for like 2 weeks now, on and on. Just, it has this kind of quite pleasant energy to it. It's definitely driven by just hectic drumming. but I think everything else about this track is in no way hectic. The guitar and bass, as I said, are quite pleasant. Vocals are also, for the most part, pleasant, almost whispered. But then, obviously, the chorus comes in. As you'd expect, the track kind of explodes. And I think the chorus is incredibly memorable, and I think it makes this track as a whole one of the most memorable on the album for me. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I think it's up there for me.
Give it a 10.
I give it a 9.
A Fool's Expedition. Another great track, in my opinion. I really like the distortion, like distorted, like you could say fucking background sounds. I think they're really fucking grimy. I love the sick guitars and the drums. I think the vocalist is great. He's got like these aggressive, like boyish vocals. I think they sound fucking fantastic. And it just, I have nothing else to say here. It's just another fantastic track in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the drums and bass absolutely carry this track for me. Drums especially are absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, the fucking drums, Jesus.
Vocals are memorable. They they kind of sound like if Limp Bizkit were actually good. I think
God.
The random, like, almost flute-like synths are just a brilliant kind of left field addition to the track. And it's another brilliant track, another very memorable track.
Yeah. I gave this track a 9.
I give it an 8.
AM/PM Truck. I think this track is pretty decent too. It's not my favorite on the album. I think it's one of the weaker tracks in the album, but it's pretty good. I like the drums in this track in particular. The guitars on this track are really fucking good too. Vocals are pretty sick as well. This one feels like kind of a more accessible track than the rest of what's on the album. It's a lot less let's just say hard to listen to, you could say.
Yeah.
It feels like you could just show this to the average person, they might like it. Like,
yeah, for sure.
It's a good track. I do enjoy it, but I personally think it's a bit too accessible for what's been going on for the rest of the album.
I mean, I definitely see what you mean. Like, the guitar actually does sound quite pleasant. The drumming is quite bright, and I think the track overall, maybe wouldn't go as far as to call it accessible, but definitely is the most fun and bright kind of track on the album. Vocals are great, and I think they're still as unpredictable as ever. And overall, yeah, it wouldn't be one of my favorites, but it is, I think, still a really good track.
I gave it an 8.
I also give it an 8.
Hit Eject. This one is another brilliant track in my opinion. It has this kind of like warped intro with these eerie synths. The drums are pretty sick too, and then it gets fucking grimy as shit. I fucking love it. Then out of nowhere, it goes into like a, I don't want to say a trap beat. Like, I don't want to say that at all, but I don't think it is anyway, but it kind of sounds like one.
Definitely.
That's why I've written.
I think it's an 808 beat.
And I think, again, the vocal performances are great. They're pretty nasally. They're really cool. And the chorus can be kind of redundant, so that kind of brings this track down for me. But other than that, I think it is a brilliant track.
The instrumental to me sounds like almost like a Death Grips track. There's a lot of comparisons here. It is it's definitely kind of a mesh of different styles, but I think it comes together very coherently.
Yeah, I've seen that in a lot of reviews. I've seen people kind of comparing this in a way to kind of Death Grips.
I don't know, but this particular track definitely would sound like it was maybe off Bottomless Pit or something.
It probably maybe on Bottomless Pit.
Yeah, I think the verses are kind of repetitive, but in the best way possible. Very catchy, very memorable. I think the track does break down into kind of an 808, almost trap sounding section, as you said, which isn't inherently a bad thing. If you pull a fucking poppy and put it in the middle of a fucking death metal song, then yeah, it's gonna turn me off. But here it's actually, it's pleasant. I think it's a nice little break before going into just absolute, just electronic madness. And this is definitely another highlight on the album for me. Possibly one of my favorites. I love how it just slows down and then lets you take a breather and then speeds back up. I love when tracks do that, especially kind of punk metal tracks. And yeah, this is another brilliant track, I think.
By the way, when you said that Poppy thing, I wouldn't have found that too bad.
There was that one song on it. Holy shit.
Yeah, that was, to be fair, now that I think of it, kinda.
Yeah,
But
no,
I still like that album. Like,
yeah, but I remember shitting on that. No, I didn't mind the album. I gave it an okay score. It's just that I remember shitting relentlessly on that one track because it pissed me off. But I just want to clear up that I don't hear a trap beat, a fucking 808 beat, and go, hate mumble rap, love Eminem. And
I like new Joyner Lucas album.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. Trap beats are okay if they're used okay, and I think this is a good example of interpreting that new style. It is a very.
We're not talking about
style.
trap beats anymore. We're not talking about trap beats anymore.
Okay.
I gave it a 9.
I gave it a 9.
The King of Cutting Corners. This one, another fucking brilliant track. Has like really fat 808s. It's got like great drums. The distortion on the fucking background is great. The guitars are great. It's another track that is literally pure insanity. And I think the vocal performance again is very good. It matched very well with the instrumental. I think this was the part where I was like, this could be a Death Grip song. But like not in like a disrespectful way, you know?
How is that disrespectful?
I mean, no, the way that it said, it sounded like I was insinuating that they were ripping them off, which clearly they're not.
Did you finish? You cut off there for a sec for me.
I finished. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the drumming absolutely fantastic on this track. I love how distorted the bass and synth is. It kind of adds to the kind of craziness of the drums. And vocally, it's one of the stranger performances, I would say, for better or for worse. Mostly better, but I do think there are sections which don't kind of sound that great when compared to some of the other stuff on this album. I still think this is a very good track, but I would say it's probably my least favorite, actually.
Fair enough. I gave this track a 9.
I gave it a 7.
Next track, Lurkin. This one, another pretty great track in my opinion. It's got more distorted synths. It's got kind of like sounds in there that kind of remind me of Tachyon for some reason. I don't know.
Bruh.
I need to stop talking about Death Grips. We need to save that for another day.
Yeah, intent.
It is atmospheric. I do really love the kind of like screamo vocals. They're angsty as fuck. Khalif Jones was really cool on this track. I really enjoyed his contribution to the track. I think it sounded amazing, and again, another highlight for me on the album.
Yeah, the beat's very kind of electro-industrial, and the spacey synths on top kind of make this track for me. I think that the vocals match the track very well. They have this kind of egotistic feel to them. As like the chorus fits really well within a track with the kind of very industrial synth setting. And as you said, Khalif Jones' contribution was great. I think the verse added a lot to the track and it fit in perfectly. And overall, another great track.
I gave this one a 9.
I gave it an 8.
Sick. Lowrider Slug. Why do I have this in my notes? I have in my notes, right? Smells like Teen Spirit intro. Nah, but it's pretty cool. It sounds good. It's a really slow track. The drums are really good on this one. I really like the impact of the drums on this track. It's pretty somber, and the angsty vocals are pretty nice too. It's a nice kind of breaking point from the rest of the album, I would say. But you know, it's not the best. I still think it's pretty decent.
I didn't exactly think of the correlation between Smells Like Teen Spirit specifically, but I do think the instrumental does sound very grungy.
Yeah.
You know, before it absolutely goes crazy and explodes with just screaming vocals, that is. I was very surprised to see Ariel Pink on the track listing. I didn't know how he would possibly fit into an album like this, but I think his feature actually works really well with the aesthetic of the track. I think he kind of bumped his style up a bit to fit in with the track, and I think it's an unexpected match made in heaven, to be honest. Ending is always unexpected with kind of the groovy guitars and drums serving as the cherry on top of this track. One of my favorites. Probably might be my favorite. Top 3 at least.
Alright, sick. I gave this track an 8.
I gave it a 9.
Please fuck off.
Straight to the point.
Straight to the point. I really like that. And this is probably my favorite. No, not my favorite track. One of my favorite tracks in the album. I think it is a great outro song. It is pure insanity. There's like distortion. The drums and the synths are fucking brilliant. The vocals again are great. I love the kind of feel it has. I think it is a very, very good ending to the album, in my opinion. I think it is great, in my opinion. I've said my opinion in that sentence like 3 times.
Yeah, it is a good ending to the album. Very aggressive ending as well. As the title might suggest. The instrumental, I think, once again, warrants some comparisons to Death Grips. Not in a, stealing kind of way, in a more of a complimentary kind of way. Like, it has that same feeling to it, that same kind of raw energy, just anger to it. I think the instrumental is absolutely crazy. The punk kind of vocals overall fit the aesthetic of the track very well, and it is a very energetic, very like in your face way to finish the album, and I do like that.
I gave this track a 10.
Whoa, I give it an 8.
Overall thoughts and opinions I can't fucking speak, Jesus. I swear I can't speak every week. Thoughts and opinions on Kiss My Super Bowl Ring.
How am I starting? How are we doing this?
No, I'll start.
Alright,
so I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this album. I think front to back, it is extremely engaging. It's grimy, aggressive. It is experimental. It's heavy. I really love a lot of the songs on here. I really love the kind of blends of punk, and there's some electro in there. I think all these blends come together and just make a beautiful, like it made a beautiful experience, I would say. Like, Death Grips comparisons aside, right? It is a fucking brilliant album. There's a lot of songs here that I really fuck with. I think that it is probably it's one of the best albums that I've heard in a pretty long time. Well, since 2019 ended. And as of right now, this is my album of the year.
Oh, round of applause to the garden. Yeah, I think Kiss My Super Bowl Ring is one of those albums that'll just have you completely confused and lost, but in the best way possible. I think the sound that the Garden kind of achieve on this album does sound like the future of punk in a way. It still has that aesthetic, that same energy, tone, charisma of punk music, but with, as you say, just really abrasive kind of features that you wouldn't typically find in punk music. The just incredibly unpredictable, sometimes electronic, fucking screaming, everything's just completely unexpected, completely out of left field. Anything they do on this album would surprise you, but by the end you don't really get surprised because they literally come out with anything, and I think that's really fucking awesome. There's instrumentals that you could expect from a Death Grip song. There's instrumentals you could expect from a Prodigy song. There's even fucking instrumentals and vocals you'd expect from a Mac DeMarco album at times. It's just, it doesn't want to fit into any box. I think it has that attitude of punk. It's just, walking its walk, talking its talk. It's doing its own thing, and it does so in amazing fashion. And it is definitely a highlight of the year for me. Definitely a must-listen album.
I would agree. Overall scores, I gave this... this is my first 9 of the decade and the year.
I don't know how the clap sound on the mic. I give this a decent 8. I'm going to stop clapping though, just in case it sounds like fucking nuclear bombs going off.
It sounds fine to me.
Alright, good.
All right, moving on to the last new release, we are going to be talking about Melee by Dogleg.
I do have a synopsis, as I always do. Dogleg are a Midwest emo band formed in Detroit, Michigan in 2015, and Melee is their debut studio album.
Sick. First track, Kawasaki Backflip. And right off the bat, this is a brilliant intro into the album. It has a great fucking emo energy to it. I love the heavy guitars and the really fucking hard drums. The vocal performances, pretty angsty, and it matches the grittiness of the heavy production. I think it is a fucking brilliant opener into the album.
Yeah, right off the bat, this is my favorite track on the album. One of my favorite songs of the year. I would probably put in the top 10, maybe 5. It's just an absolutely incredible, immense emo song. The energy of the track is really intense, really immense, as I said already. Vocals full of emotion. They have an anthemic quality that I think all good emos should have. Instrumentally, very, very solid, very strong, especially when it comes to the guitar. It's right in your face, it's powerful, and I think every single aspect of this track comes together just expertly, and it is an incredible track.
I gave it a 9.
I gave it a 10.
Woo! First 10 for me how today, is it? Or
yeah, it is actually.
Sick. Alright, next track is Bueno. Similar to the last track, the guitars and the drums slap really hard again. I think they sound amazing. The vocal performances are really shouty, really angsty, maintaining that kind of emo feel. I think it sounds great. I really enjoy this track. I wouldn't say it's my favourite on the album, but it's still a really, really solid song in my opinion.
Right off the bat, brilliant drumming from Jacob Hanlon. The drums kind of seem distant in a mix, which might sound odd, but I think it gives the track a lot of atmosphere and just a lot of kind of intensity as well. Guitar, fantastic as always. Vocals, again, very anthemic, very emotional, very typical of emo, like what you might expect, especially from Midwest emo. This is a Midwest band, but it is very well done, and yeah, I think it's another fantastic track.
Gave this one an 8.
I gave it a 9.
Prom Hell. I think the guitars feel very present on this one, whereas the previous track it didn't really feel that way. But I think it sounds great. The drums still really slap. I love the drumming on this album in general. Vocal performances, again, they are fucking brilliant. I love the angsty feel to them. Again, maintaining this emo edge. I think they sound great. 3 for 3 right now. So I think it's a good song.
Yeah, I agree. 3 for 3. I think the drums are very powerful, especially the build-up. Like, there's almost as much emotion coming from the drumming as there is from, like, say, the vocals or the guitar. And speaking of the vocals, the vocal style, I think, is a lot more calm on this track. A lot more emotive, but without losing any, power or intensity or energy. I think the distorted layered, guitar is a great touch. I think the guitar sounds fantastic, and overall, it's another really good track.
I gave it an 8.
I also give it an 8.
Fox. This is my favourite track in the album. For how short it was, it managed to captivate me. I love the fast-paced production on this one. The guitars shine, the drums are great. Again, the vocals are absolutely fantastic. They match the instrumental very well. Again, another emo epic.
Yeah, once again, energy of the track is very in your face, very powerful. Drums are just the epitome of power. They burst through your eardrums in the best way possible. They shine throughout the track, throughout the whole album. Layered vocals are probably the most cliched Midwest emo thing, but in the best way possible. They sound great. The vocals are brilliant. They have a lot of intensity, a lot of also nostalgic quality to them. And it's probably my second favorite track on the album after the opener.
I gave this track a 9.
I also give it a 9.
Head First. This track, the drums kind of put me off at first a bit, but I think they sounded fine afterward. I got used to them after I got used to the kind of groove that they were going for. The bass was very solid. I really like the bass on this track, and the guitars were really crisp, very good. The chorus is great. It's a very dark performance from the lead vocalist, and overall, I think it's another great track. 4 for 4.
I'm cleaning my glasses while I'm talking about this. The track is I think more of a slow burner, as it's not as immediately in your face as, you know, certainly some of the other tracks, but it does certainly build its way up to the intensity of a lot of the other tracks. I think the instrumental is, as always, incredible on this track. I think the guitars I like how they're slightly hazy, and they add like a lot of atmosphere to the track. And yeah, is this the fourth track? It's 5 for 5, I think. Yeah, 5 for 5. Great track.
I gave this track an 8.
I gave it a 9.
Hotlines. This track, I think it's really solid. I really enjoyed this one. It has kind of a nice groove to it. The bass line is really sick. I fucking dig the bass line in this track. The guitars and the drums are great. Again, they slap as previous tracks shown. I think that the vocal performances are really solid. They're energetic. The chorus is energetic as hell. I think it sounds great. It's solid. Another great track. 6 for 6.
Yeah, it's another very like intense song, and another song that just refuses to slow down. It changes up like either the guitar riff or drum riff often enough to never like lose track, but also never get old. I think it's another one of my favorite tracks on the whole album. Definitely a standout. I think the drums especially are a standout. They're very entertaining, and it's very fun to try and keep up with them. Yeah,
I gave this one an 8.
I gave it a 9.
War Turtle. Similar to the previous track, I think that is pretty cool. It's got a really cool groove to it. I think that the guitars and drums are fucking fantastic. I think that the vocal performances, again, are very solid. They're very shouty on this track. Really like the intense energy that they bring. And yeah, another great track for me. 7 for 7.
I think, without a doubt, Squirtle is the best starter Pokemon in Generation 1. And I think War Turtle is probably the most underrated second evolution in all of Pokemon history.
I don't know nothing about Pokemon. Leave me alone.
Okay. The track is a lot more kind of cleaned up. It's less hazy. And I think that kind of lets the vocals shine. It highlights the vocals a lot. Guitar is very pleasant, I think. I love the guitar. It has this nostalgic quality to it, and I think the vocals are actually really well sung. Another highlight, yet again.
I gave this track an 8.
I gave it a 9.
Alright, next track is Wrist. I think that this was the point in the album where I felt like things were getting a tad bit one-dimensional, but I think this is still a good track. I think the guitars are pretty solid, the drums are fine. There's a cool immediate kick-off. I think there's a great vocal performance again. Not my favourite on the album. I would go as far as say it's kind of the weakest on the album for me. But it's still good nonetheless.
I like how there's a lot of contrasting features in the track. I think the guitars are quite light and quite pleasant. Yet the drums, I think, and vocals are very intense and very energetic, very in your face. Brilliant vocal delivery from Alex once again. And yeah, I wouldn't call it my favourite, but I still think it's a really good track.
Gave it an 8.
I also gave it an 8.
Cannonball. The instrumental fucking hit like one, let me tell you that. I think, well, this track is pretty slower. It's still really good. There's great bass playing. The guitars and the drums, again, are still very present, still very good. Again, the vocal performances, again, have been very consistent. They've been very good throughout the whole album, and it's pretty similar on this track. They've been really good, very encapsulating. And it's another great highlight for me, I'd say.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the most unique tracks on the album. I think the drums really carry this track, especially during the verses. But that's definitely not to say the rest of the band don't pull their weight. Absolutely love the instrumentation, absolutely love the vocals, love the post-chorus with the kind of group vocals chanting in a very anthemic fashion. I think it's one of the most memorable parts of the whole album.
That was fucking brilliant. I forgot to mention that.
This is one of my favourite tracks.
I gave it a 9.
I also gave it a 9.
Ender. I think that this is 6 minutes of an explosive epic. I think that it was great in terms of instrumentation. The orchestra was fucking great. Whatever orchestral things they were going with, there was cool switch ups like between instrumentals in the track list. I think that they sounded fucking brilliant. And again, vocal performances are fantastic, as I would expect. This whole album has been really good for me so far, and I think this was a fantastic way to close the album. Only issue is, I think it's a bit too long. That's it.
I think this is just an absolute unit of a fucking track. 6 minutes in length it's a long track for emo. I can only think of maybe a few iconic emo tracks that are at that length. I think the vocals are brilliant. They're very catchy at times. The instrumental is, as per usual, very strong. It kind of progresses through a lot of different stages, a lot of different switch-ups, as you said. And I think each one of them just goes into the next just like so easily, so effortlessly. And I think every single part of this track is equally as entertaining. When a song kind of starts to slow down, just a faint guitar kind of, the track then builds up again slowly and explodes completely. That's probably my favorite part of this whole album. It's incredible. I think this is a brilliant track, and it's certainly a very good way to finish off, the album, especially with the kind of whole short string segment at the end. I think that was a nice little pretty touch, nice little cherry on top. And yeah, it's a really good track.
I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 9.
Overall thoughts and opinions on the album. I think that this is it's a really solid emo epic, I would say. I think that this album is pretty good beginning for the band's career. I think this is definitely an album from a band that you should keep on your radar. And ultimately, I enjoyed the emo kind of vibe it gave off. I love the heavy production. I think it sounds great. I love the vocal performances. They're fucking fantastic. I think that overall, this album it's really solid. It's one of the better ones that came out this year, in my opinion. And it's definitely an album that you should have, you should listen to, and have Dogleg as a band you should have on your radar. I think overall, very solid. A very solid beginning.
Yeah, very good start for emo this decade between this and Spanish Love Songs, I think.
Yeah.
It's a sign that emo isn't going to die in the 2020s.
Neither is punk, might I add.
In the 90s, emo was at its peak. 2000s, it kind of fucking died a little. Everyone forgot what it meant. Everyone thought My Chemical Romance was emo. There were obviously bands like Brand New who were keeping the genre going. Then in the 2010s, it had this whole emo revival, and it was maybe at its peak of all time, with bands like, I don't know, The World is a Beautiful Place and The Hotelier. But going into the 2020s, emo's still going strong, and Dogleg, I'm gonna definitely have them under my radar as a frontrunner in the genre for this decade. I think Melee is just 35 minutes of just powerful, exhilarating, and very emotional Midwest emo. I don't think it's very complex in what it does. I think it is quite, it follows a lot of Midwest emo tropes. I will acknowledge that, but I don't think that takes away any enjoyment out of this album. I think it still has just a lot of passion and sincerity that is very undeniable. I think the instrumentation throughout is incredible. Drums especially, they never once just diminish in power and intensity and energy. I think the guitars are very powerful, very intense, yet at the same time they have this kind of comforting and pleasant quality to them. The bass is always there, making sure you don't miss it. It always stays strong throughout this whole album. And all of these aspects are mixed very well. The production is very good. And yeah, I think it's absolute amazing album, and one that I urge you not to miss, especially if you're a fan of emo. Do not miss this one.
I gave this track, this album, a light 8.
I gave it a very strong 8.
Nice. Alright, before we move on to the classic, what was your favourite album of the week?
My favourite album of the week was Dogleg's Melee.
Mine was Kiss My Super Bowl Ring, The Garden.
The classic is... Do you wanna announce it?
Drum roll, please.
They've probably seen the thumbnail. It doesn't need a drum roll. It's Nevermind.
Nevermind. It's Nevermind wearing the thumbnail. Literally, one of the most iconic albums of the 90s. Come on, man.
Yeah, for sure. One of the most iconic album covers on top of that. I don't think anyone could really mistake what this is.
I've never liked that album cover.
Me neither, but it is iconic.
Yeah. Alright. Do we really need to give a synopsis on Nirvana, or...
No, it's Nirvana.
Yeah. If you know Nirvana at this point, let's be real here.
They're the biggest t-shirt brand in the world.
No, that's Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
No, it's Nirvana, man.
No. It's Dark Side of the Moon.
I don't have a Dark Side of the Moon t-shirt, and I have 2 Nirvana ones, so there.
Fuck's sake. Doesn't matter. I've seen more people wear Dark Side of the Moon t-shirts than Nirvana t-shirts.
I absolutely haven't.
I have.
But I feel like Dark Side of the Moon would be more people who actually know the album, whereas Nirvana, I know there's a lot of people who just... Oh, nice smiley face.
Name your favourite Nirvana song. It smells like Teen Spirit.
Yeah, I think that's probably their best. Speaking of Smells Like Teen Spirit, track 1, Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Alright, this song is an absolute classic. I'm pretty sure... Come on, if you haven't heard this song ever in your life, where the fuck have you been? You're lying. Literally. This shit is everywhere. It's still a great song to this day, in my opinion. I love the heavy guitars, the drums slap, the bass is pretty solid, and, you know, Kurt gives an iconic performance. Kurt Cobain's performance on this track was great. It's got like the somberness in the instrumental before the chorus. Then when the chorus goes in, it's just heavy, it's grungy, it's iconic. Love that chorus.
Yeah, it feels odd even dissecting this track because it is one of the most famous songs of all time. Despite its popularity, I think it shouldn't just be overlooked because, it's so mainstream popular. It is an incredible track.
It really is.
Drums are super iconic, especially the opening, drum fill. You can't help but headbang. The guitar is even more iconic, especially that riff. We all know what riff I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The bass is really strong. It's the glue that holds this track together. And Kurt's vocals sound absolutely incredible. One of his best vocal performances of his career, and it's all glued together really well by Butch Vig. Butch Vig, not Bitch Vug. Butch Vig's incredible production on this can't be overlooked. It's an incredible track.
I give it a 10.
I also give it a 10.
In Bloom. Another great Nirvana song in my opinion. The guitars and the drums kick ass. They sound amazing. I really like the somberness again in the verses. The chorus is catchy as hell. I fucking love that chorus. And, Kurt Cobain, again, he was fucking brilliant all over this track. I think that it's pretty... I'd say it's probably one of Nirvana's best songs. Like, in my opinion, at least. I think it is fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. It's another absolute classic, iconic track. Drums are fantastic. That breakdown, that drum breakdown is just iconic as fuck. Bass is really powerful throughout. And Kurt's vocals are brilliant. I like the slight reverb on some of the more mellow parts in the verses. I think it's a great touch. Very well produced. And overall, it is definitely one of the most kind of catchy Nirvana tracks they've ever released.
Give it a 10.
I also give it a 10.
Come As You Are. Is that actually what Nirvana means? I heard people say that, but I'm not too sure. Nirvana? Like the actual word Nirvana. Does that actually mean...
It's something to do with, I think, just Buddhism and just accepting everything around you. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah. If you know, let us know. this track is really good. I like the chords. They sound atmospheric and they like sound really fucking psychedelic in my opinion. It's really fucking weird feeling, but I think it sounds amazing. I think that the drums are great too. Kurt is really solid. His lyrical performance was very good, and I can appreciate the look back at his reference to Nirvana's first album, Bleach. I think overall this is probably one of my favorite Nirvana songs, I would say.
It's once again incredibly iconic. I think it's the other Nirvana track that everyone will immediately recognize, especially because of that riff. That riff is very iconic. Even if it is allegedly a rip-off of some other tracks, I really could not care less. It's incredible. Kurt's vocals, I think, sound oddly pleasant. Even throughout like the explosive chorus, they sound nice. They don't sound aggressive. They don't sound as angry and angsty as they all often do. The drums and bass are really tight, really strong. I think the solo during the bridge, I think while it's not the most technically advanced, it's very good. It has a very good it's a very good addition to the track, and it has a lot of angst and emotion in of itself. And overall, I really love this song. I wouldn't say it's among their best. That might be an unpopular opinion. I wouldn't say it's one of their best tracks, but I do still love Come As You Are.
I gave this track a 10.
I gave it a 9.
Breed. There's so much energy in this track. I think this track is brilliant. I love the distorted bass. It sounds so sick. The guitars are solid. The drums absolutely slap. There's so much energy coming off of this instrumental. And Kurt matches that energy with a fucking brilliant performance. Overall, I think Kurt Cobain has had fucking brilliant performances throughout the whole album. This one stood out to me the most, in my opinion.
Yeah, the guitar absolutely kicks ass. I think the drums are very powerful, especially during the opening, where with the build up, Dave Grohl is just a fucking machine.
Literally.
Like, awesome vocal performance from Kurt, I think, as always. He completely matches the energy of the track, as you said. And the mixing on top of all that, the mixing is perfect. Everything sounds perfect.
I gave this track a 10.
I also gave it a 10.
Lithium, another iconic Nirvana song. I really like the bass intro. It sounds really fucking cool. It goes into this like really explosive chorus. I fucking dig that. I think that Kurt is amazing on this track. His lyrics are dark as hell. I really fuck with Kurt's performance very much so. It matches the instrumental in my opinion. I think this is probably one of my favorite tracks on the album.
I agree, yeah. As you said, another really iconic track. I love the kind of like guitar strumming during the verses with Kurt's just perfectly mixed vocals. And then when the song explodes, it's still really incredible. Like, Kurt only has to sing the words "yeah" and still make an iconic and anthemic chorus. The post-chorus of the track is probably my favourite part. With Kurt, repeating the line, "I'm not gonna crack." It's just engraved in so many people's brain, that line. Yeah, incredible track, very iconic.
Gave this one 10.
I also give it a 10.
Next track, Polly. It's got a cool acoustic guitar opening. It's a more somber track. I think it's a pretty somber track. It has a cool acoustic instrumental. I think Kurt's performance throughout this whole track was really solid. I think this is another great track in my opinion. I've actually loved a lot of this album so far. I think it is fantastic, and I don't know. Personally, I actually like this song quite a lot.
Yeah, and in my opinion, it's one of the weaker tracks. I think not only on the album but that Nirvana have ever released. I think Kurt's vocals sound really good. I think the chorus is very, iconic. But I think the track for me is just overall a bit too bare bones and, unmemorable. If it was in Nirvana, it would probably be very unmemorable. I think it's good. I don't think it's great.
Fair enough. Gave this track 10.
I gave it a 6.
Bro. Alright, next track, Territorial Pissings. Am I allowed to say that? YouTube don't demonetize. Okay. We're not getting paid for this shit anyway.
Yeah. We're like
Right.
we're doing this as a just as a gift for everyone from us.
Yeah. I think this track again is great. I love the distortion on the guitars. Sounds fucking brilliant. The drums, man. Dave Grohl is an absolute machine. Fucking love his drumming on this song. And of course, Kurt was brilliant. His whiny yet shouty vocal performances match this instrumental, and I think they sounded amazing. I think it's pretty underrated Nirvana song. I would say anyway.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely one of the most underrated Nirvana tracks. That's the first thing I wrote in my notes. I love how the kind of guitar is so distorted that it just distorts everything around it as well. The energy of the drums and bass is really powerful, really incredible. Performance from Kurt is fantastic. I think it's one of the most memorable performances he's ever given. And this is an absolute gem. I think the deep cuts on this album are just as good as the singles, in my opinion.
Yeah. Gave this track a 10.
I also give it a 10.
Drain You. Right, this one, it's not my favourite on the album. I think it's pretty solid. It's got really solid guitars. They got solid drums. I think Kurt's performance was pretty good, but ultimately I didn't really find it as memorable as some of the other tracks on the album. I think it's still a great song, but I didn't find it as memorable as all the previous songs that we've talked about.
Yeah, I think it's another underrated gem. I wouldn't say it's the best, but I still think it's an incredible song. I think Kurt's vocals sound very anthemic, and I think the slight reverb on them helps achieve this. The bridge is really incredible. I love how it kind of slows the track down. Leaves you on the edge of your seat as it slowly builds up with Dave's really fucking incredible drums and just kind of this cacophony of noise from everyone else, and then the track just swings right back into it. I think that's one of the most memorable parts of the whole album, and I think this is another incredible track.
I gave it a 9.
I gave it a 10.
Lounge Act. I think this track's pretty good. It's got a nice, solid groove to it. The drums, again, and the guitars are really fucking solid, as you'd expect on a Nirvana album. I think that Kurt gave a really good performance. I think overall this sound is great. I think it sounds fantastic. And I think it's another really good track. I think it's another solid track. Not my favorite, but, solid.
This is one of my 2 favorite tracks on the album. I think the bass the bass is incredible. I think Kurt's vocals are once again mixed perfectly. The chorus is very powerful but very catchy. I think the track is quite simple at its core, but I think there's just so much to it that makes it incredible. And even with its simplicity, I think it has a lot going for it, and it is just one of the most memorable Nirvana tracks to me and always has been.
I gave this track a 9.
I gave it a 10.
Stay Away. And this is another pretty good track on the album. I think that the bass is really good. I think the drums are really solid. I think overall instrumentation, as you'd expect, is great. I think Kurt had really good performance, and that chorus, the shouty chorus, I think was really good. I think it matched the intensity. I think it sounded amazing. This track overall was mixed well. It sounds great. Just another really good track in my opinion.
I think it's really nice of Nirvana to name a track after Kurt Cobain. I mean, Post Malone's tattoo.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
No, really, I think this is my other favorite track on the album. I think the drums and bass are once again really strong, really powerful. I think there's very unique vocals from Cobain with kind of the distorted ad-libs. I think it's fucking unique. It's really awesome. I think the intensity of the chorus mixed with the kind of the suave of the verses, I think makes for a really perfect combo. And yeah, this is my other favorite track. And I wasn't being serious about the Post Malone thing. Don't worry.
No shit.
Someone might be listening being like, Post Malone actually got the tattoo because of this track. It's not the other way around.
Jeez, imagine if someone was that. I don't want to say anything.
I don't want to
drive anyone. I gave this track a 9.
I gave it a 10.
On a Plane. This is my least favorite track on the album, I would say anyway. I think it's not a bad song by any means. I still think it's really good. I think that instrumentation was very good. Again, the drums, guitars, bass, they were very solid. Again, Kurt gave a good performance, but personally for me, it's not that memorable of a track when compared to everything else that came on the album. It's my least favorite at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's not one of the best, but I think it's a very good track. The melody on the verses is very catchy, very memorable. I think it uses backing vocals to highlight certain lines very well. That's a very effective, aspect of the track. Many thanks to Butch Vig for his. I can't understate how incredible the production is, and I think he really can't be overlooked. I think he is one of the masterminds behind this record. It's instrumentally as strong as ever, and yeah, it's I think another gem of a deep cut. Not my favorite track on the album, but it's definitely a really good track.
I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 9.
Something in the Way. This is another great track in my opinion. I love the eeriness of this whole track in general. I think the eerie guitars sound fucking great. Kurt's performance is dark as fuck. This is probably the darkest song on the album in my opinion. It's really, really depressing. It has a really depressing atmosphere, and Kurt matches that atmosphere with his dark lyrics and his dark performance in general. I think it is a fucking brilliant track. I think it is probably one of my favorites on the album.
Yeah. I think it's just, I'm like a really mellow, really depressing way, and it's an incredible way to close the album, I think. The song was allegedly written when Kurt was living under a bridge. Don't know how much of that is true, but that's the kind of the folklore behind the song, and I think it's really beautiful, really atmospheric, and it's quite an unexpected way to close such a extreme, powerful, energetic album if you're not familiar with it. But yeah, I think it is the perfect closer, and I think it is a perfect song as well.
Gave it a 10.
I gave it a 10.
Is this the last track?
Yeah, Endless Nameless is a hidden track.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
It plays like if you leave Something on the Way on for 20 minutes on the CD or the cassette. No, it's only on the CD. If you leave the album playing for 20 minutes after Something in the Way, Endless Nameless comes on.
Sick.
I used to read a lot of stories of people who had the Nevermind on CD and they'd fall asleep to it, and then after Something in the Way played, they'd get fucking abruptly waken up 20 minutes later by fucking Endless Nameless.
Oh, that's perfect. That is fucking perfect. So, overall thoughts and opinions on Nevermind by Nirvana. I think that it deserves the praise that it gets. It is a fucking amazing album. I think that it's not my favorite Nirvana album. I still prefer In Utero a lot more. But this album is still a great classic, in my opinion. While it contains a lot of Nirvana's most popular songs, I don't mind that. I think those songs still are great, and they're popular for a reason. I think that overall instrumentation is great. It is a forefather album for grunge, I would say anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it made the grunge sound popular, and I think it sounds amazing. The mixing and what do you say the producer of the album's name was?
Bitch Fug. Butch Vig.
Butch Vig. Butch Vig is put this album together sounding amazing, and think that overall I think that instrumentation wise it is fucking amazing. There's tracks on here that sound fantastic, that have different kind of sounds to them. There's some that could be atmospheric, some straight to the point, some just straight pure fucking insanity. And I think that Kurt Cobain was amazing on this album. His performances were iconic as hell. He had catchy. He could be catchy when he needed to be catchy. He could be dark when he needed to be dark. And he could be just pure fucking psychopath when he needed to be. On fucking Territorial Pissings. I think that overall, this album, it is a classic. It deserves to be held in high regard. And I think it is a great Nirvana album.
Yeah, I think there's not a lot I could possibly say about this album that hasn't been said a million times over. I think it's the dictionary definition of a classic album, and for a lot of people, when they hear the term 90s, just this album cover and a lot of the songs on it are the first thing that comes to mind. And, you know, taking into consideration just how much incredible and influential music came out that decade, I think this is definitely a testimony to the widespread, you know, impact that this album has had on popular music and popular culture as a whole. And yeah, it's a classic in every sense of the word, and I think there's a very good reason. I think, as I said, I as you said, I would agree that I prefer In Utero for, you know, it's kind of more raw intensity, and it does feel like, you know, Kurt had to sacrifice some things on this album to, you know, kind of achieve more widespread acclaim. But I think that the album doesn't suffer at all. In fact, I think a lot of the songs mightn't have happened if, you know, Kurt got his way and could have made just another In Utero here. And I think it's just a crowning achievement in music. I think every single instrument here is just perfect. I think Butch Vig, you know, definitely flexed his production muscles in putting this together, and I think put his names in the Hall of Fame of, like, you know, music producers forever after, you know, pulling this off. Yeah, it's an incredible album. It's a classic in every sense of the word, and I think it deserves that title completely.
All right, overall scores, I gave this album a decent 9.
I gave this album a decent to strong 9.
Very good. What are the albums that we're going to be doing next week?
It won't be the next episode, though. Do you want to?
It will not be the next episode. Next episode, we are going to be doing a Death Grips Worst to Best.
Woohoo!
I'm excited for that one.
So stay tuned for that. But for next week, the albums are Dua Lipa, Future Nostalgia.
Woo!
Childish Gambino, 15th of March 2020.
Woo!
Thundercat, It Is What It Is.
Woo!
And to celebrate its 5-year anniversary recently, Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly is the classic album. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for the Death Grips Worst to Best. And, you know, have a nice life. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, thank you guys again for checking out this episode of the Taped podcast. Necessary links to my channel, Mihaw's channel, and the Rate Your Music and Album of the Year pages are in the description. And yeah, see ya.
Bye.